Normally I compare it right off the bat with books they've read before, the Choose Your Own Adventure books, where you finish three-quarters of a page worth of text, and then it tells you, if you think you should open the door, go to page 70. If you think you should, go to the left, go to page 90. So most of those books have been read and reread again by the kids in elementary school. So they all know what those books are. So I explain it in terms of that. I say it's like Choose Your Own Adventure books, but souped up, superpowered books that are able to actually talk to you instead of only giving you two choices or three choices if they were really advanced books. So that's how they get the concept in their head. And I tell them the best thing with these games is just to experiment. Try and type in a sentence, see what it does. Play around. There's the list of commands that work right away, but that doesn't mean you're only stuck with those. So keep trying, and they have fun just trying all the sentences that they can possibly figure out how to come up with. And then once they get the standard responses to some of the statements they make where the game doesn't recognize it, so it does its standard response, they figure out funny ways to say the sentences so that the standard response ends up funny, and then they have to run around and tell everybody, okay, type in this, then look what it says. So that's part of the fun of the game for them, is coming up with that sort of humor. It's funny, it makes me feel old when I bring out these games, because it seems like not long ago that I was playing them so feverishly, and then it's like, oh yeah, they came out 10 years before you were even born. So they look at them as ancient things of a bygone era, and oh man, how old you must be that you played these games when they didn't even have graphics. So it's a funny joke that we end up having between us once we play them. They're just amazed that people would play these games. At first it didn't have graphics until they start playing them. They're like, yeah, these really are cool. I could see why you played them now. They're pretty good, even if they don't have graphics. I just spend, when the class starts programming, I just spend time running from kid to kid to kid to kid. And all the questions are like that. Well, I want it now to do this and this and this, and only if he has these 5 items, but only if 3 of them came from this place, and he had to drop that one over there, but he can only pick it up when he's coming through in 2 turns, and then if he does all that, then finally the key will drop from the chandelier. It's just like, well, that's a wonderful idea. It's very involved, but you got to give me a break here. Maybe 2 weeks from now, I'll have figured out how to pull this one off. So, and they'd get together themselves and try and figure out how to get these puzzles to work. And I'd sit down with a group, and we'd have, 10 of the kids all grouped around one kid whose weird puzzle had inspired everybody. They're trying to figure out how to make this puzzle, and I'm in there with them. Well, I don't know. Let's try this. Type this in there. Let's see what happens when this happens. No, that didn't do it. And then another kid would go, okay, try this, try this. So, no, that didn't work. So the creating of the game itself takes on the same aspect as when you were playing the game. The same communal aspect of shouting out the thoughts and try this, try the other. Oh no, it didn't work. Oh, that's funny though. Let's keep it in there. Yep. So that's all part of the fun of the process. If you're going to use software like that, games in your class, you have to be careful about school appropriateness and watching out for the kids. And that's a great thing about a lot of those games is you don't have to worry with so many of them that what they're pulling out of it. And there isn't the violent aspect and the kill or be killed mentality that most of the games today have. Even the competitiveness just isn't there unless it's in terms of how fast can you finish the puzzle. Well, I finished the puzzle this fast, but it's more fun to share with each other the solution to the puzzle than it is to turn it into a really competitive thing. So there's a nice social social molding that takes place with these games that doesn't take place with a lot of the other games that are out there. No curriculum really exists out there for teaching that type of class, a gifted studies class. And every teacher that teaches these students kind of goes their own way. So everything's made up curricular-wise. So yeah, I definitely didn't run across any, gifted teaching journals out there that were recommending, I suggest that you use TADS to do blah blah. But instead, what you do see a lot of, they recommend oftentimes teaching kids other languages when they're in the advanced class, that this would be to their benefit. Well, we have normal language classes in the school. They can learn Spanish or what have you. But I'm not bilingual with other languages, but I do know computer programming languages. So that was a thought of mine as well. They'll be bilingual between English and these other languages for the computer. That's the way I can get them to that type of mental processing, is going the computer route. This I've been doing now for 2 years.
2 years. Okay.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Teaching for 11, but this is the first time that I've had these middle school, this type of middle school class. As far as
Right.
The reading aspect of the text games, it provides, as a reading teacher, I saw immediately the benefit to these games as far as giving immediate reading feedback and practice in comprehension, reading comprehension. If they don't comprehend what they're reading, there's no way they can respond to these puzzles and get anywhere. And it's a great fluency, which is the speed at which you read and the ease at which you read. It's a great fluency builder. My brothers and I read at a very fast rate today, and I think probably the main reason is playing these games growing up, and you just see the text across the screen, and then you type in and there it goes again, and you get used to tracking very fast with your eyes. And the kids are, when they're reading it as fast as they can, because they get excited and they're typing as fast as they can, so they're reading as fast as they can when the next response comes up. So without them knowing it, they're getting all this repetition of move your eyes, scan your eyes, down the page as fast as you can. Speed reading practice is basically what it boils down to, and the excitement is what makes them get to that fast speed. So, as opposed to looking at the graphic and clicking on the one button that says A or the button that says B, etc., it doesn't have that level of reading integration. So, I was sent to a computer camp when I was in middle school by my parents. It was done by a local community college, and they taught programming and on these Apple IIs at the time. And if you hurried up with your work and you got done with the programming for the day, then they had these bins of floppy disks you could try out that had the games. And one of the ones I happened to get my hands on once I was done was Zork, and I put that thing in and started playing it, and I freaked out at the time because it was like, oh my goodness, this computer game is talking to you, and I'm talking to this computer game. I couldn't believe it. I was like, ew, it's artificial intelligence. Here we are. We've arrived. Dun, dun, dun. It didn't have the graphics that Oregon Trail had at the time or whatever, but just the fact that it was like I was talking to this computer just amazed me. So every day I go in and speed through my programming thing as fast as I could, just so I could get to and play this Zork game. And I started, you get out the pieces of paper, and pretty soon figured out you had to make the little maps and draw the little squiggles all over the place. And I remember when I figured out that, oh, you can go north from one room, and you would think you would go south to go back to it, but you go west. And it took me a while as a middle schooler to figure, oh, wait a minute, the hallway is turning. And so it was just, I couldn't believe how advanced they were for the time, even though it was just text. So that was my first experience, was at that computer camp. And then a couple years later, my father got us a Apple IIe at the house. And so we started getting games, and the first games we went for was, I remembered that Zork game, so my brothers and I, we got a hold of that one, and then we started buying other Infocom games shortly after. And that was about all we played on that thing was the Infocom games, trying to figure out all those riddles and whatever else that they came up with. So we'd play it as brothers, and then I remember even when I went on to college years later, a guy up in the dorm happened to have the collection of the Infocom games, and all the guys in the dorm were up there screaming at the computer screen, "Type, go left, grab that bar, type, be quiet." Everybody's just yelling out their contributions to trying to solve this thing. It was hilarious, and everybody's just staring at text. That's all that's on the screen. Most of the people I talk to now, and I told some people about the upcoming documentary. I'm like, oh, so great! Somebody's gonna. Didn't you play those when you were a kid? They're like, what? What are you talking about? I said, yeah, you type the things in the computer and then it talk back to you, right? But there's no graphics in there. You did what? I was playing on the Pac-Man on my Nintendo system at the time. I don't know what you're. I remember Oregon Trail. That's what they all come back to. I remember Lemonade Stand, but I don't remember those games. So, and of course the kids today don't know at all about those type of, I mean,
right.
My students, when I shared it with them, were just floored. It was hilarious that games like this had existed, and the funniest thing about it was they thought to a large extent they were more advanced than most games out there today, just because of the aspect of talking to that game. They couldn't get over that they were talking to it. Even today they're used to Call of Duty and the Xbox high-end graphic type stuff, and the humongous role-playing game arenas, World of Warcraft and whatever, and you'd think that they thought, oh, this is so arcane, but it was that aspect of it, the talking to the computer, and it was joking back with you, that made them think, wow, this is cool stuff. Where can I go get these and download them? Because they made those Zork games the public domain now, so that
right.
Kids could go online and download them. We were studying at the time, in the gifted studies class, we were studying Aristotelian and Boolean logic with them, and part of a gifted studies curriculum, it's an elective, so it's supposed to be fun, and the whole concept of the class is to push their minds in creative ways and give them opportunities for higher level thought that they don't normally have. So we were in the middle of this logic unit that was taking about a 9-week period, and I just remembered in the middle of that, oh hey, those Infocom games had all these brain teasers in them, and this would be great as something to give them something to do once they finish the rest of their work. Being the advanced kids, they finish kind of fast, and so you're always looking for ways to keep the ones that are finishing faster busy in a constructive manner. So I brought in the Zork games, which I downloaded and installed them. I teach in a computer lab, so all the kids have their own computer, and everything they do is on the computer. So I installed it to them. I said, okay, now when you finish, there's this brain teaser game, and you can get on there and you can play that if you're done with the rest of your work and everything else that you want to do. So they got on, and pretty soon they were nudging their friends next, you gotta hurry up, you gotta play this thing. Da, 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 da. So they were getting, the excitement just kind of went around the room, and by the end of the class, all of them had burned through their work for the day so they could get to this game that they were, which was Zork 1 at that time, play. So I put in Zork 2 and Zork 3 for them to mess around with, and they started playing. This is before, a couple weeks before spring break at the time. So I was still trying to figure out in that year what direction I was going to go in that would build off the concept of logic and solving problems logically for the rest of that semester. And so a couple of them had mentioned, do you think you could teach us how to do these? Because I was also the computer teacher at the school. And so I thought about it, and I came back, and so I asked them, all right, we got spring break coming up. I don't know, but I figure I could look into learning how to program these things over spring break. And if I can figure it out over spring break, do you want to do this for the rest of the year when I come back and learn how to program these games? And the kids were excited about it. They're like, oh yeah, yeah. So I thought, now don't get your hopes up. I don't know. I only got 1 week to do this in, but I'll do my best. So I went home and started researching, and I found TADS and Hugo and Inform, and went back and forth between the three of them, and finally figured out that TADS would work best for my situation. So we went with that. And I came back and we started programming them. And the neat thing was how well it tied into the other class they had, which was reading. I also teach them advanced reading. And because the entire game is reading. And in order to create one of those games, you have to write a story. The game won't survive on itself unless it has a compelling story. And so what I ended up doing was tying that gifted studies class into the gifted reading class. And once they learned how to program the games, every 9 weeks in gifted reading class, they had to do a project. So the project was going to be, you are going to take one of the books we've read this year, pick whatever book you want, and then you're going to make that into a game, where the character playing the game is one of the characters of the book that you've read. And you have to figure out how to make it so that the person playing the game is actually going to act like that character would in the book. You can't have the person acting in ways which don't follow the actual story line. You can't have, two of the books that we were doing at the time where we were comparing Wind in the Willows with the Bambi book. Mm-hmm. And you can't have Mr. Toad running around being nice all the time, or the character has to act like that. So they did. They produced. Each one of them picked their favorite book for the year, and then they turned it into a TADS adventure game for them to show off to the rest of themselves by the end of the year. And we just put them all into a big network drive so they could all play each other's games as they were doing it, and they had a hilarious time playing each other's games. And okay, come play mine now, okay. And then they'd critique each other. Oh, you need to change it. I can't tell where I'm going here. You need to fix that, make it a little bit easier or whatever. So it was great cooperative learning and group work for them, even though they all had an individual project. The nature of it was such that they were so excited that it was a very natural sharing that was going on with those projects, as opposed to your more normal school projects of making a backboard or making a PowerPoint presentation or whatever, where I haven't seen a project generate that level of excitement to where they're working in groups even though that's not what they're told to do, type of thing. So I loved it. And by the end of the year we had 31 text adventure games of these different literary books. Yeah. Oh yeah, The Bar in the Noisy Room. That one was the entire class for weeks. They would come in every morning talking, before class started, lined up, getting ready. I think we should do this today. Oh yeah, well I think we should do this. And so they'd get to their time to play the game, and they'd try it was that riddle right there more than any one of the other ones in that Zork game. Just how do you get that bar out of that noisy room? And right. They eventually worked through it. They figured it out. In the end, you had to have at least 10 rooms in your map, and each room had to have its own mystery or puzzle that had to be solved in order to beat the game. So that was a large part of the project, which combined the whole issue of logic study with trying to get the logical puzzles to work in the story, to stay true to the story. With Bambi, it might have been trying to find some blades of grass during the winter, mm-hmm. or Toad, it might have been trying to find the key to let himself into the secret passage to take back his house from the weasels. Yeah. So they had to stay within the story, but create that many puzzles to get across their game.
Now, what age are they?
They are 6th grade through 8th grade, so that's 11-year-olds through 13-year-olds. I started working on making a text adventure game of the middle school, and just to make sure it could be done the way I wanted it to be done, because my next idea is that come next time around, the kids are going to produce a text adventure of the middle school itself, and I'm going to split them all off into like a programming team, and I'm going to give them, okay, these are your classrooms that you're responsible for turning into rooms in the text adventure. And so when we're done with it, we're going to put it up online for people to download the virtual middle school, so they can actually see what it's like to go to our middle school, and put all the teachers as characters in the rooms and have them all have their own little problem to solve in the different rooms. So, yeah.
That's a good portrait.